In this video, we will set up the class types for use at your centre. In links, class types define the parameters for any individual class attached to that type. The class type defines whether the classes are run on a term or perpetual basis, the direct debit conditions, where payments will be allocated for classes, and suspension rules. Your links administrator and classes coordinator should be present for this training. Before beginning this training, please ensure you have details of classes currently running at your centre, including terms, direct debit dates, and suspension rules. To create your class types, go to the admin module and select Classes, Class Types. You will first need to click Add New Type. A pop-up will appear with 3 class types available. Standard classes run once a week, and a student will be booked in for the same class at the same time and day each week. Standard classes can be run as either terms, perpetual bookings, or both term and perpetual booking together. Squad classes create bookings within a group of linked classes so that a student booking can include several classes at different times and days during the week. Squad class types are only available as perpetual bookings, and the direct debit prices will be set under the class type. Holiday programs are also booked within a group of linked classes, however are term-only classes with no direct debit parameters. Let's start by selecting standard class type. We first need to give the class type a code of no more than 6 characters and a description. We then work our way through the tabs. Under the Point of Sale tab, we need to define at least one service code for classes in this type to report to. You can set up a new service by clicking the Setup button if you have not yet created a service code for this purpose. You can also define a second service code if required, and the financial split for each code. You can also define a joining fee if one exists for this class type, and the amount for this fee. Select Allow Trial Bookings if you wish to allow trials for classes in this class type. If you are allowing trial bookings, you can set an amount to be billed for the first class. You can also choose whether you will charge an amount for the first class and charge an amount for cancelling a trial class. Under the Term Info tab, we can select whether the classes in this type will run as term only, where students will book and pay for a whole term of classes, perpetual only, where students will be booking in indefinitely and direct debited for the classes, or term and perpetual together. Running both will allow students to choose whether to book in and pay by the term, or book in as a perpetual and be direct debited until such time as they cancel. If you are running term only or term and perpetual, you will need to add at least one term here. Keep in mind, once you have allocated a term here and started taking bookings, you will not be able to change the term dates for that term. Use the drop-down menu to select the current term for this class type, and if required, the next term. You can also add up to the next 4 terms in the extra term boxes. The Move Terms Up button should only be used when the term listed under current term is complete. Do not move terms up while the current term is still running. The Move Terms Up will be used later on when terms are being rolled over into the next term. If you are running this class type as perpetual only, or term and perpetual together, you will need to fill in the details under the Direct Debit tab. You will first need to select Enable Direct Debit. You can then select if you will charge for public holidays in the direct debit or not. If you will be direct debiting monthly, you can select Charge by number of classes in period. This will adjust the direct debit based on whether there are 4 or 5 classes in each particular month. This is not needed if you are debiting weekly or fortnightly, as the number of classes per period will remain constant. You can then set the direct debit schedule. First, set the direct debit start date. You will need to set this date to start before you intend to take any bookings for classes in this class type. The first direct debit will be completed as a dummy run. You will also need to define how often the direct debit will be run, by number of days, weeks or months. For this example, we will run a fortnightly direct debit, so we define the period as 2 weeks. If using integrated payment, you can also enter the date direct debits will start in integrated payments. Once you have entered in the start date and how often the debit will run, a list of the direct debit dates for the next 12 months will appear on the right. Moving across to the Suspension tab. If you wish to define a fee for suspending a class booking, you can enter it here. Use the 3 dots to find the appropriate service code. You can enter a price. Select Fee must be negative if this will be a negative suspension fee. Under the Daily Screen tab, we set the interval to show on the visual schedule. If your classes will start at 15 or 45 minutes past, set this to 15. Otherwise you can set to 30 for classes that will start on the half or hour. Under the Registrations tab, we can allocate registration types to this class type. Use the drop-down menu to select the registration type you wish to add, or if you have not set up the appropriate registration type, select Create New Registration. For assistance creating a registration type, please refer to the Registration Types video. Select Required if this registration type must be applied to all bookings for this class type, then click Add. Under the Public Holidays tab, any public holidays that have been set up and assigned to this class type will be listed here. Public holidays are set up separately and will be covered in a later video. We can also add any activities associated with this class type for access purposes. Under the Web tab, we can select how far ahead classes in this type will be shown when searching for classes online. You can either leave this blank to use the default days ahead setting defined in the class web settings, or you can override this and set the days ahead classes in this type will appear in the search. Once you have entered in all the relevant details under each tab, select Add to finalise the class type setup. You are able to edit class type details if required by selecting the class type, updating any relevant details, then clicking Update. We will now look at the differences in adding a squad class type. If you need to set up classes for squad bookings, you will need to create a squad class type. Click Add New Type and select Squad. The Point of Sale tab needs to be entered as you would for a standard class type, defining the service code or codes, and joining fee if needed. Under the Term Info tab, you will notice the selection is greyed out. Squad class types are only able to be run as perpetual bookings. Under the Direct Debit tab, you will need to enable direct debit, choose whether to charge for public holidays, and enter in the start date and debit frequency. The Suspension Fee tab can be filled in if required as it was for standard class types. Enter in the service code, amount, and define if the fee must be negative. You can now define the booking options for classes in this type. Squad classes are a group of linked classes that a student can book into rather than a single class each week as with a standard class. You can decide whether students booking into squad classes can choose which classes in the group they book into, or whether they have to be booked into all classes in the group. If you are allowing the students to choose which classes they are booking into, you can either leave the classes unselected and select which class, or select all classes by default and unselect the classes the student does not wish to attend. You will also need to define the prices for bookings in this class type. Enter in the fee payable for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 or more classes. You will need to enter prices in here for as many classes as a student can book within a squad group. For example, if a squad booking can include up to 5 classes, you will need to fill in the price for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Once again, you can enter the interval to show on the daily screen. Apply any registrations that will be associated with bookings for this class type and whether they are required. And define the class web days ahead to search parameter if needed. Once you have completed all the details, click Add to finish creating the squad class type. You will need to create a separate class type for each squad that is run at your centre, as the prices for squad bookings are set in the class type rather than by individual classes. Finally, we will take a look at creating a holiday program class type. Select Add New Type and click Holiday Program. The point of sale, daily screen, registrations and web tabs can be set just as they were for the standard and squad class types. Let's look at the other tabs. Under the Term Info tab, the selection is greyed out with Term Only selected. Holiday programs are not able to be run as perpetual programs and are paid in full rather than by direct debit. Enter in the current term that the holiday program will run and next terms if required. Under the Booking Options tab, we have the same options as for squad bookings. Holiday programs are a group of classes where students can either select which classes they will attend or be booked into all classes in the group by default. If you are allowing them to choose which classes they will book into, you can select if all classes will be selected by default, and you would need to unselect classes the student does not wish to attend at the time of booking. Once you have entered in all the details under each tab, select Add to finalise the holiday program class type setup. Add as many class types as required, then close. In the next video, we will set up the levels for use in your classes.